Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to my review for The Prince of Egypt. This was produced by DreamWorks Animation Studios, and it starred a lot of people. Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, Patrick Stewart, Jeff Goldblum, Sandra Bullock. I could go on. And this is widely regarded as one of the very best from DreamWorks Animation, and they have a pretty good pedigree, let's just say that. And I decided for Easter Sunday that I wanted to record something special, and my mind just kept drifting to The Prince of Egypt. And wait, did I say I was going to be reviewing The Prince of Egypt? No, I should say we are going to be reviewing The Prince of Egypt, because I am grateful tonight to have two very special people to me to help cover this very special movie. First up, I've brought her up so many times on my channel, it's not even funny. I co-host the Hidden Gems podcast with her. She is one of the best reviewers out there by a country mile. Seriously, New York Times, hire this woman. It's Rachel over at Rachel's Reviews. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hi.
And
Thank you for having me.
And I am incredibly grateful. I have the honor to be in the presence of Durbania, brother. It's Durban over at the Durbania channel. Thank you so much for coming on, good sir. I've been a big fan of your videos for a while, and so I thought to myself, if only I could get Durban on here. And then when you said yes, I'm like, made my day.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a great movie. I think I did this last Easter, so super excited to revisit this movie with you. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. And so in my research, I found that this movie was really the brainchild of Steven Spielberg, who at a meeting with Spielberg and studio head Jeffrey Katzenberg, Spielberg just casually dropped the line, you should do the 10 Commandments. And, well, the rest, as they say, is history. And speaking of the 10 Commandments, I feel like Prince of Egypt and 10 Commandments are often compared 1 and 1A to each other, even though they couldn't be any more different in terms of filmmaking styles and just general, I want to say, ethics, for lack of a better term. So have you all seen the 10 Commandments? What do you think? And is this inferior, superior?
Well, I mean, I think it's natural to compare the two because they're the same story. So you're going to compare them, I think. But I think they are quite different in many ways. I mean, you've got that old school Cecil DeMille epic filming of the 10 Commandments and Charlton Heston. And you have, I can't think of the name, but you have Nefertiti and being all slinky and everything.
Can't go wrong with Edgar G. Robinson or Vincent.
Yeah, Edgar G. Robinson out of Brooklyn for some reason. We have no idea why.
Brooklyn district of ancient Egypt. There you go.
And I mean, it's a very good film, and it's a classic. I think everybody. I'd be surprised anybody that hasn't watched it. It was on TV so much. It was such a thing that it seems like one of those things that everybody's watched. I definitely prefer Ben-Hur if I had to pick those epics. I think Ben-Hur is better, and certainly Lawrence of Arabia is my favorite of those kinds of movies. But yeah, I mean, it's a good film.
Durban, what about you? Have you seen 10 Commandments? What do you think?
I have seen it, but it has been so long since I've seen it. But I would definitely think these two movies are very, very different from each other. I mean, even with Prince of Egypt, you don't even get to the 10 Commandments until the very final shot. And you think it's ending happy, but you realize that's the golden calf. So good point to cut off to make you feel good, except trouble's about to happen right there. I like the 10 Commandments. I agree with Rachel, though. I think of those epics, Ben-Hur is my favorite. I've never sat through a movie so slow and so long and enjoyed every second of it as much as I had with that original Ben-Hur. So I think of those biblical epics back in the day, Ben-Hur is my favorite. If I'm going to watch, though, a Moses movie around Easter, I usually pick Prince of Egypt. It's just one of my favorite versions. I think they do a great job with the music. I think Rachel said this in a comment we were having before we were going live here, that it's very reverent. And so I really like that.
Yeah, when it comes to Ben-Hur, you come for the chariot race and you stay for everything else.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one final note before we do move on, I found this fascinating. DreamWorks actually brought in Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scholars to make this movie as faithful to the book of Exodus in the Bible as possible. And I honestly forgot that this was a thing, but at the beginning of the movie, they say, even though creative license has been taken, we have tried to make this as accurate as possible. So, Durban, you're a Bible man. Do you think that Bible man? But do you
I
think
know
this
what you
is
mean.
do you think this is accurate?
I think for the most part it is. I mean, it definitely takes its artistic license, and it definitely takes certain things and it condenses them. But as a whole, yeah, I think it stayed very true to the heart and message. And in fact, one of my favorite scenes is the burning bush scene. I mean, you have this scene where they took tremendous artistic license. There's definitely some things that are in the Bible that they completely cut out. I mean, for instance, Moses had kids. They totally cut that out of the movie. But when you're telling this movie in terms of this story, you don't have time to get into all of that. So I feel like they did a good job, even though they cut a few things here and there, and it's a little bit condensed here and there. They kept it true to the heart of the book of Exodus and to the heart of the story. And the burning bush scene is just a great picture of that, because it is a little bit different than what's in the Bible, but I think it stayed very true to the character of what the Bible was saying.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest elaboration, I guess, would be sort of this relationship between the two brothers, and that that they were close, but then rivals, and all this kind of thing, and we don't really know that, but I feel like it's a fairly reasonable assumption, or I don't know, I think it's fine, to assume that if they both grew up in the palace, that they knew each other and had some kind of bond. I think that that's reasonable.
And I'll say one thing that I feel like they missed, because you said brothers and this triggered it in my head. It's the fact that Moses was like, I can't speak, God, I can't speak, I can't do it. And God said, no, you're going to do it. But you know what? To make you feel better about speaking, your brother Aaron is on his way to meet you. And so I'll give you the words, you give them to Aaron, and Aaron will speak for you. I think for doing this animated movie in an hour and a half, I don't think they had a ton of time to try to throw that in there, explain that, and make that happen. Mm-hmm. So I think for the time allotted for what they did the best that they could. So there's definitely some differences, but they kept to the heart of things very well.
I think so. I agree.
So I think that's a good place to enter the world of the Prince of Egypt, shall we?
Let's do it.
So the movie opens, and this movie opens in about as good a way as you could ever ask for, with "Deliver Us." And I had not seen this movie in such a long time, but when I was sitting down to watch it, I was not prepared. And so when that first beat hit, the dun, I'm like,
yeah,
what the heck? And he's like, "Deliver us." And this number is just excellent, because you get everything that you need to know about the relationship between the Jews and the Egyptians, like, immediately. It's like, one is, like, in the words of Nick Fury, ant boot. Like,
yes.
I think this is just a brilliant use of visual storytelling. Durban, what do you think?
I think it's one of the things that's really brilliant about it is the way it opens. First, you have that shot on the sky and that, squiggly cloud formation, which is the exact formation it makes when God is talking to Moses in the burning bush. So in other words, the way it opens and you connect those pictures, there is God listening to their song, "Deliver Us." He's hearing the cries of his people. So when you put that together, you have the picture of God hearing their cries. You have ant boot, like you so put, like, they can't work under the Egyptians anymore. And that whole "deliver us" working into Pharaoh ordering the death of the firstborn and Moses being put in the basket. Like, it really is a great, strong way to open this movie and set the stage for what's going on.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. I mean, you get that incredible animation, and then the score by Hans Zimmer, and the music by Stephen Schwartz. And Stephen Schwartz had done the Children of Eden, and and so he knows how to do biblical themed shows and stories, and he also, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, he is really great at this kind. I feel like that. I mean, everybody knows him from Wicked, but I don't know. He's really great at this kind of feeling.
Has Hans Zimmer ever made a bad score? The correct answer is no.
No.
Yeah, he has some really random ones like Boss Baby and stuff like that you don't realize.
He did Boss Baby. See, I never saw that movie.
Wow.
He did.
Here's a depressing fact: the Boss Baby and the Prince of Egypt were made by the same people.
What?
Deliver us.
Yeah,
Yes.
but he did Children of Eden in 1991. That was kind of his, I think, first big show. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Children of Eden, but it goes through the creation of the world and Adam and Eve, and it's pretty fun. I particularly like the way that Satan is portrayed. His song is really fun.
It's a fun Satan song. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Villain songs are always the best, because I'm sure we'll get to this in this one, but that when you have the two magicians doing their song in this movie, oh man. The villain songs are the best.
He also did Godspell in the 70s. I mean, he's just, this is like his thing, is sort of religious themed kind of songs, and that have this kind of gravitas, I think. Like I said, everybody knows him from Wicked, but he also has this whole sort of faith-based kind of element to his singing, to his scores, which I think are really beautiful.
Yeah, and to follow up Deliver Us, we see the scene where Moses is placed in the basket and sent up, or is it down the Nile River? It's one of those directions.
And on the Nile somewhere, yes.
In the general vicinity. So, and then he ends up with the Pharaoh and his family, and then we smash cut from a baby to adulthood. And this chariot race scene definitely used most of the creative license there. I don't remember reading much Bible stories about a great chariot race between Moses and Ramses, but I think this is still a really fun scene, and it really illustrates, like, this scene and the next scene where we meet Patrick Stewart, Pharaoh, is just how much pressure Ramses is under, because Patrick Stewart has the line of, "One weak link can break the chain of a mighty dynasty." And even though Ramses is going to be the villain in all this, you kind of feel sorry for him, or at least I do. Rachel, am I off base on this one?
No, I mean, I think you can have empathy for characters that make poor choices, for, the different aspects of their life. I don't think that is problematic.
Yeah, and
so
I think the movie also does a good job of showing that Moses is more than willing to be like, "Hey, I egged Ramses on," and like, so he truly loves Ramses. It's the turn is not like a complete like an out of nowhere thing. They have a legit relationship with like genuine love for each other, not by blood but through bond, and I think that's communicated very well. Durban, how about you?
Oh, I think so too. I love the bond that they established between Pharaoh and Moses, because it does make it even more tragic when they have to go against each other. And then when they bring up this whole thing between Patrick Stewart Pharaoh and, the Pharaoh we know, it's interesting because the 1 weak link, he never lets it go. So when it talks about the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, you understand why Pharaoh here is hardening his heart, because of all this like abusive, mean talk that his father constantly is down on him. Don't be the weak link. He just refuses to be that weak link. So even when you have God doing the supernatural and he has every opportunity to let his people go, he doesn't, because it's that terror that got built in his head right there at the beginning. Don't be that weak link.
I do think one thing that would be different now, if this was made now, is that I think you would have a really different, more diverse vocal cast. There's nobody here that is remotely
Right.
Egyptian at all. Like, not even
Pharaoh
close.
was definitely not.
and also in just the whole creation, the directing team, the whole thing. And that was something very very late 90s, you know, kind of thing. You have like Mulan without a single without really much of a cast or a team behind it that had much of a Chinese voice. There's some, but I think that that's something that would be different now if it was made today, hopefully. And it would be interesting to see if that would make much of a difference. I mean, I love it so much, but I think that maybe is one spot that would be interesting to see what that would be like.
Yeah, Rachel, I do agree with you there, but I mean, you can't really argue with the actors that they hired. I mean, Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, who I swear is like born to play actors. He was Voldemort. He was Goth in Schindler's List, one of the worst, one of the most evil people in human history, period. Like, and I could go on. Even when he's a hero, like in the upcoming King's Man, he feels more of like an anti-hero, if that makes any sense. So I get what you're saying with the diversity thing, but at the same time, it's like the actors I got were so good, and so it kind of, at least for me, it kind of offsets the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that they are definitely needed. I think that some of the celebrity casting is not needed, and this is the case with all DreamWorks films, is that they overstuff with celebrities. You do not need Sandra Bullock to be playing. You do not need Jeff Goldblum playing Aaron. And it is maybe even a slightly distracting when you first hear that voice, because it's just so memorable in such a small role. I think you don't need Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Well, they were great in that song. I mean, just to have Steve Martin and Martin Short for playing with the big boys now was pretty brilliant.
I was actually going to parlay it into the next point of, because one of the criticisms I have heard about this movie is that people find the priests, Steve Martin and Martin Short, to be a little distracting. They fit well for me, but I don't know, maybe I'm alone in that. Rachel, what do you think?
I think they're a little cringy, if I'm honest. I don't share the same love that Durban seems to have for that song. But I mean, I love this movie. So any like little nitpicks are just that, nitpicks. They're nothing that, I mean, it was in my top 10 favorite animated films of all time when I did my ranking a couple of years ago. So they're just like little nitpicks. I don't hate them, but I feel like if you're representing a whole culture and a whole people and a religion, and I don't know, it's just a little like, maybe not the best.
Well, for me personally, I think you can count the priest scenes on like one hand and have fingers to spare. So it's not like they're everywhere, but I do see your point. Durban, you clearly love these two, so why don't you talk about them first?
Yeah, I just thought it worked because I think they are supposed to be cringy. I mean, these priests, they aren't real. They are con artists. They are showmen. So here you are believing Pharaoh is the actual incarnation of a god on earth. And so now you have these con men constantly trying to please that god. And I think what you can see is they obviously don't believe, because even with the whole turning the staff into a serpent thing, you actually see Moses' staff turn into a cobra. But you don't see that with Steve Martin and Martin Short. They go off screen for a second, there's a flash of light, now they got two snakes. Or when Moses put the staff in the water and it turns to blood, they put some powder and water and it turns red. So I think what it illustrates is what you get in the Bible, because in the Bible, they could only reproduce what Moses was doing to a point. And when you look at what they could reproduce, it's the kind of stuff you can con. But when it got to the deeper and deeper, more supernatural, it's like, we can't do that anymore. I wish we had that moment in this movie. And I love the song with the plagues, but I feel like the song with the plagues jumps over something cool where we could have the two magicians can't do it anymore. And that could have been a cool little breaking point for them, but I don't know. I think they're supposed to be a little bit irritating. They're supposed to be a little bit off, and I feel like it works.
Yeah, their act was legitimately smoke and mirrors.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we skipped over I think one of the most beautifully traumatic animated scenes when he realizes who he is and he goes and talks to the Pharaoh. And then there's that whole sequence of him seeing the hieroglyphics and hearing the
Yes.
story of all of the murders of the babies and how that experience for him and the way the music does that and the way the animation, I think it's so amazing.
As a matter of fact, that's next on my list, Rachel. So I reading my mind over here. But yeah, that's such a great scene. I mean, with you kind of see these little moments of Moses being like, okay, maybe this isn't my home after all. With the scene where he lets the girl go. I'm sorry, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she eventually becomes his wife, letting her go, and then being named chief architect, and he's just not a big fan of that. And then the first meeting with Miriam and Aaron, which I think is a really good scene as well, because Miriam doesn't want any is like how dare you crucify us, and Aaron's like, oh no, she doesn't mean any of that, she's just tired from the day's work. And just like, man, Jeff Goldblum, like a little Goldblum goes a long way. Durban needs to
Yeah, I think I could agree that Jeff Goldblum, they could have got somebody else to voice that. Jeff Goldblum is a weird character actor, and Aaron is not a weird character. So there are certain things Jeff Goldblum fits so well. Aaron, he sticks out like a sore thumb as the voice of Aaron. So I guess in this case, I'm glad they didn't choose to make Aaron the spokesperson for Moses. But that was a cool scene, though, once you get past Jeff Goldblum. And as Rachel said, you see him having that nightmare, which I would interpret as God giving him the vision of what happened. And then in real life, he wakes up and actually finds those hieroglyphs of the kids being thrown into the Nile. I was like, oh my gosh, like that whole sequence is powerful, where it's like he's being shooken awake. You don't belong to that world. You belong to this world.
Yeah, and almost nobody in this movie does their own singing. And so I don't know why they didn't just hire, I mean, I know why, because they can put it on the advertise it and whatever, but I would have just hired the singing people to do that.
Yes.
We don't need, there's no reason to have.
Can you imagine Jeff Goldblum singing? Oh, man.
Don't put it past Disney. They have them under contract. They might actually do it.
I think that Ralph Fiennes is one of the only ones who actually does his own singing in this movie. They're almost all, they have a singer, a voice actor, and which is fine. I prefer that rather than bad singing, I guess. But it's just like, why not just hire the voice actors, the singers to do the anyway. But yeah, it's a very, very powerful scene, and also just the way that they're able to capture the expression in the animation and the character of Moses as he comes to realize who he really is, and it's just that panic, and it's very well done.
Yeah, and the song that precedes that, where he's like, "No, I am a son of the Pharaoh," and he tries to convince himself that this is truly his lineage. It's like one last gasp before the facade comes crumbling down. Like, the music in this is so just well timed, and just it works. It's like a dance. They just intertwine with each other in like a beautiful yin yang of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah.
So after that, Moses accidentally kills a guard, and well, that's the breaking point. He leaves the city, and Ramsey's like, "Where are you going? I am the sun. If I can write in the thing that the night is day and the day is night, it will be done." And Moses is like, "I don't belong here." And Ramsey's like, "What do you mean?" And Moses, this line got to me so much when Moses is like, "Ask the man who I once called father." Just like chills, like all up and down my body. I hope I'm not alone in this.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's very moving, and you're just drawn into the story.
Yep. Well, it's cool because that scene is also, it echoes the scripture where it says, instead of Moses choosing that fleeting moment of sin, he chose the harder path but it was God's path. And so you see, he doesn't know what that path is. He's scared. He's accidentally killed a man. And so he's got a lot of stuff weighing on his shoulders. But I feel like that line was the echo of that scripture, and it was done powerfully.
You know, when I watched that scene for my rewatch for this, I thought of the Bible verse. I believe it's Proverbs chapter 5, verses 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and he will make your path straight. I think I got that right. I hope so.
I'm good to me.
So.
I am no Bible scholar. I'm not even close, but I have my moments. So then after that, Moses enters the desert. He sheds himself of all of his Egyptian garb and his ring and everything. And
well, he keeps the ring. That's the one thing he kept. Yeah.
But me being practical, I'm like, don't throw all that gold away. You can live on that for a long time.
My wife said the same thing. We were watching it the other night. She goes, "That's money, son. You keep that."
Kind of hard to come by in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
And so then he being Moses, pronouns pal, stumbles on the village and comes across the girl that he let go, and her father Jethro, played by Danny Glover. And I love this character. He only has like 2 or 3 scenes, and he's just great. I love his enthusiasm because Moses is like, I have earned nothing. I have caused nothing but pain. And Jethro is like, yes, you have, but God is forgiveness. And just, his optimism is just infectious. Durban, you agree with me on this, right?
I do. And the song that he sings about, you are a thread in God's tapestry, it's perfect because it's exactly what Moses needed. Because Moses felt like an Egyptian. He belonged until he found out he was a Hebrew. But how could he belong to the Hebrews? Because he's been, a son of the Pharaoh all of his life, and they all hate him. Now he accidentally killed an Egyptian. Crap, I belong nowhere. And so when he runs and he comes out here he is directionless, aimless, and like you said, you have Jethro with this boundless faith, this boundless optimism, which comes out in this incredibly fun and encouraging. Zipporah, I think that's his wife, Zipporah. And so you have this whole great song where you see them court, you see them get married, and all of it being about you are a thread in this great tapestry. So view your life through heaven's eyes. You could truly beat yourself down constantly looking through your eyes, but view your life through heaven's eyes. I love that song.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And Brian Stokes Mitchell, he does the vocals on the song, and he has such a beautiful baritone voice. He's incredible, and I love it. I love the animation, how it's kind of swirling as it goes through this this montage. And anyway, it's great. It's a great song. I love all this. I mean, my least favorite is the Playing with the Big Boys, but I still love all of the songs. I think the music is just absolutely beautiful in this movie.
Even then, like, that song still fits the tone that they're going for brilliantly.
Yeah.
And so then Durban talked about this a little earlier, but now we get to the burning bush, and oh man, like, this scene is just beautiful. I watch a lot of these like background like music where they take movie scores and set them with like real world sounds. I want someone to make like this score, this I just butchered that, I apologize, but that song mixed in with like the wind and the sounds of the desert and just how beautiful it all is. And I don't know if this was a conscious decision or maybe if it was like something referenced in the Bible. I'm not sure, but I love how they make God's voice Moses's voice. And so
yeah.
I like how it plays out the theory of we don't really know what God sounds like. It's just up to our interpretation. I don't know. I may be off base with that one, but Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is the best depiction of God that I've ever seen in any kind of film. I think that it's the way that if I were to imagine what it would be like to be in God's presence, this is what I imagine it being like. And so many other versions you see, the big bombastic kneel before me kind of a thing, and that's not how I picture what it would be like if I were to be in God's presence. I picture it being much more quiet and peaceful and reverent. It's almost like you could do yoga to this sequence because it's so calming and peaceful, and I love it. I think it's very moving, and so yeah, it's I think very special.
And most movies, when they portray God, it's either the "I am that I am" God or
Right.
Morgan Freeman, and there's no in between. And no offense to Morgan Freeman, he's awesome, but it's nice to see a different like interpretation, and
Yeah.
and
You got Exodus Gods and Kings when he's a little 10-year-old
Oh
boy.
gosh, that's the worst. That's the worst.
That was a weird flex by Ridley Scott. I have no idea what he did.
It just felt like somebody who was mad at God portrayed him as an angry 8-year-old, and that's all that was.
It didn't make any sense.
Let my people go. Also, I need my juice.
Yes. Oh man.
And so then, after going to the burning bush, Moses learns of his mission from God. And this next scene where he tells Zipporah of what he saw, where there's no dialogue, just music, it's so great. It's just where he's just like, and Zipporah's like, and it's beautiful stuff. This movie has its visual storytelling beats just absolutely on point every single time. Other movies could take so many lessons from this, and that might sound arrogant, but hey, it's my channel. What am I going to do?
There you go.
Yeah, I love the way that they use choral in these sections to I just think it adds that lushness to the wouldn't be there if it was just an orchestra. It just makes it feel more awe-inspiring.
And so then after all of that, it's time for Moses to ask Ramses to let the people go. And I love the scene where they see each other for the first time in years, and Ramses is like, Moses! And they give each other a bear hug. And it's just like, oh man, this is going to suck in about a few minutes because all that trust is just going to be shattered. And it literally is in the next scene where Moses just tells Ramses, I'm just straight up here for you to let my people go. And there's nothing you can say that's going to stop me. And this scene where Ramses is just like to himself, where he's cross-legged and he has his head in his hands, where he goes from like curious to frustrated to kind of ponderous, sympathetic, and then finally to vengeful. And he gives him the look, just like, if looks could kill, that would be like a grenade launcher. Like that was intense. Durban, what do you think?
It was intense because it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, where he doesn't want to be the weak link. It's that thing that his dad hammered into him. And now that his brother is coming and saying, let my people go, it's kind of like, okay, back in the day, you were the troublemaker, but it was playful. Like, what are you trying to do right now? I am not the weak link here. We need these slaves. And I think one of the powerful illustrations here is when you look at how Ramses saw the people, he just saw slaves. It didn't matter. Kill all the firstborn. Who cares? It's just, they're not people. And it goes to what God said in David's time, I look on the heart. You know, you look on the outside, I look on the heart. And here's God hearing the cries of his people. And they're just, Ramses is seeing them as objects. God is saying, these are my people, and you will let them go. And so it's a great buildup to that scene because you just see that brotherhood challenged. You see Moses desperate, like you said, loving Ramses and feeling so bad, like, yeah, it's good to see ya. I'm going to crush everything that we've held dear in about 5 seconds.
Yeah, and you think about it, you're talking thousands and tens of thousands of people. It's not just like a small group of prisoners or something like that. And so it's going to radically change everything about the Egyptian civilization to let all of these people, all these people go. And so you can kind of understand why for somebody that had been raised the way that he was raised, why this would be a kind of a shocking request to be asked, because this is all he knows. He's never, it's not like he knew it before they were there. They've always been there in his, and this is just the way things are. And so I can kind of understand why he would be like, what? I mean, how many people do you think, Durban, there that we're talking about?
Oh, I don't know. It was I mean, they were incubated and came in as a family, and now they're coming out of here as like tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stretched. It was a nation that was drawn out of Egypt, not a small number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and literally the next scene afterwards, Ramses is like, the workload has now doubled, thanks to you, Moses, and closes the doors on him. Next scene after that, Aaron shoves Moses into the mud and like, thanks for nothing. And this scene kind of frustrates me because like, hey, Aaron, I didn't see you up there talking to the Pharaoh. At least Moses had the stones to do something about it. But I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this as I usually do.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that too, though. Like, I think I would be pretty irritated if somebody caused. You're already working so hard, and now you have to work double hard. And because I don't know, I don't like doing that kind of manual labor that much, and I think I would be pretty grumpy if somebody made me do that. And
Durban,
so I kind of get it.
Durban, what say you?
Oh, I totally get it. But that's the ploy that Pharaoh was using. It was a way to divide the people, to turn them against their deliverer. And it's funny, though, because when you read the Bible, and the movie's not going to get too deep into this because it's choosing a specific story to tell, but in the Bible, they're crying, deliver us. Once they're delivered, they're crying, oh, if only you'd let us die in Egypt. Why did you bring us out here to die? And so it's funny because they flip-flop quite often.
Yeah,
and so
that's
honestly,
true.
it fits the tone that they had that scene in here. But it also, I really think it illustrates a real, because the Bible even says that happened. Like Pharaoh in the Bible did that. And it is a tactic to turn them against Moses. So Moses will lose heart and lose faith. This whole thing will come to an end. They will drop this stupid dream. Like that was the whole idea. And I think it showed a very real challenge that Moses had to face.
It's true. I mean, you are talking about a people that immediately question Moses at every turn, whether it's the pillar of light, whether it's the parting of the Red Sea, whether it's the obviously building the golden calf and worshiping that. I mean, they are very, very skeptical people.
I think the Bible said stiff-necked.
Yes. Yes. So they have all kinds of problems with manna, and I mean I think that if I saw the parting of the Red Sea, I'd be pretty stoked. For at least,
but they forgot it pretty quick. I mean, they get in the Bible, they get out of the Red Sea, and then they're in the wilderness, like, we need water, and they start freaking out because the one place they get to with water, the water's bitter, and so Moses taps a rock and it opens up, but it's like, it's like real quick, here we go.
Yeah. And when he got the 10 Commandments, he had even more light and truth that he wanted to give them. But then when he saw the golden, and he breaks the tablets, then he has to go back up and he gets the lesser law because they weren't ready. They weren't willing to do it. And so, they were a pretty weak people. Is that fair? I don't know. Stiff-necked, whatever the Bible says.
This is turning into a Bible study, and I'm all. This is.
But it's good foreshadowing, right? It shows you that the movie did a good job trying to capture the character. Like they're not going to tell those struggles because they're telling this specific story. But even in this specific story, they were able to draw from that stuff and put it in here to show you very real challenges that Moses would face.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense too because they were such a big group. You're going to have people. Obviously, not everybody is going to be working in the pits and everything like that. There's going to be all kinds of people. There's going to be cooks. There's going to be people doing all kinds of work, right? There's going to be leaders of the Edward G. Robinson character kind of person. But you're going to have all different kinds of opinions and feelings, and some people that were like, wait, we didn't have it that bad over there, and that's what you end up seeing.
And so after all of this, Moses just picks himself up and, well, basically through God, he basically tells Ramses, well, I'm your huckleberry. And so the gloves are officially taken off. You see what I did there, right?
I saw what you did
very
there.
Good.
It was awesome. My wife even quoted that line while we were watching this movie last.
She sounds awesome.
She is pretty awesome.
And we also have to remember that these 10 plagues, they were the Jewish people had to go through those too.
Well, they went through
except for the last
chunk of them, but there was a few that they didn't go through as a sign, and you kind of see that in this movie because you see everything covered in shadow except the land of Goshen in sunlight, and so they illustrate that with that final plague of darkness. But it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and I can't think of how horrible that would be to have all those frogs and the bugs, and that would be awful.
You know, the interesting thing is it's horrible in that way too. But I don't have this study in front of me, but you'd have to really get into this study. When each of those 10 plagues comes, it hits one of the gods of Egypt. So one of the gods that they would serve, like when he turned the Nile to blood, like they had a god there and the Nile was life, so God turned it to blood. I have power over that God. And so it's like each plague is God showing I have power over that. And so we're seeing a complete upset of everything turned upside down. I mean, this was a devastating time for Egypt on every level.
Yeah. And then that final plague.
Ew.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
We'll get there in a second, but that first plague where it turns the river blood red, it's like, that's your warning. And then literally after that, it's frogs and then locusts and then just that last one, the killing of the firstborns. And this is like, I watch a lot of horror movies. If anyone follows my channel, I have a Scary Mania month where I review 31 horror movies in 31 days. So I think I know my way around scary movies. This was more disturbing than like half of the movies that I watched for Scary Mania last month. And this is just quite frankly a very disturbing scene because it's just dark, and literally it's like the light of God just traveling from place to place, and the only defense is I believe it's lamb's blood, if my memory serves me right. And it all culminates with the death of Ramses' son, and that whole scene where it's just nothing but light and shadow, and Moses is like, Ramses, I don't know what to say, and Ramses just gives him the death stare again, and he's like, get out. It just, wow. I don't know what to say other than just it's brilliant stuff. It really is.
I mean, that scene is terrifying because seriously, if you go through the 10 plagues, it's Ramses seeing it. Every chance he had to turn around, every chance he had to let the people go. And instead of taking those chances, he continuously hardened his heart. And, when you get into the Bible, a lot of people say the Old Testament God and the New Testament God are different gods, but they're not. Because even in the Old Testament, the way God reveals himself to Moses, he says, my name, and he says, my name means I am compassionate, slow to anger, full of mercy. And so for it to come to this point, the death of every firstborn, God was probably more devastated than anybody. And so he gives a way out, the blood of the lamb on the doorway. And this is the Passover. This is something that has deep meaning with Jews and Christians. And with Christians, it's a foreshadowing of the fact that we deserve judgment, but the blood of the lamb brings us mercy. And it's this incredible, powerful picture. And I feel like the movie did this incredible job. Like you said, it turned it into a horror film. It became this incredibly dark moment where even those with the blood of the lamb on their door, they're in awe, and the corner's like, oh my goodness, what is this? Like, I'm sitting there going, what would this have looked like in real life? Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Well, and the music helps a lot too in that, like I said, with the chorus and "Thus saith the Lord," kind of a thing. It's so good.
It's one of those scenes where like you're literally on pins and needles because you have no idea what's gonna happen. Like even I, who have read the Book of Exodus, are just like, what's gonna happen again? And it comes at you out of nowhere. And then literally after all that, Ramses tells them, "Right, you're out of here." And so Jews are like, "That's our cue to skidoo. Let's go."
Yep.
And so they travel. So they
The
travel
other
across.
thing is, think about this though, real quick. It's almost like a reap what you sow moment, right? Because the Egyptians threw all the firstborn Jewish babies into the Nile at the opening of this. And now it's almost like you sowed that and the time for harvest has come, and it's like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, I never considered that. So yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. It's like in the words of a wise philosopher, Justin Timberlake, what goes around comes back around. Back around.
Well, and this wasn't even just babies. This was any firstborn. So you think of all of the Egyptians who suffered because of Ramses and his unwillingness to his pride, because of his pride, and it's really quite it's quite sobering.
Yeah.
And then we get to the scene that literally everyone remembers. Even if you've never seen it, you know exactly what's coming next, the parting of the Red Sea. And words cannot do justice how beautiful this whole thing is, because it's got such a great build-up too, because it's like Moses is like, okay, how am I supposed to do this? And then God tells him, the staff. And you're just like, okay. And takes it, slams it down, and the sea parts. And you just see this very narrow pathway for all of the Jews to walk through. And everyone just looks at him like, well, no better ideas, let's go. And so they walk on through. And this scene, what sticks out to me the most is that I watched this on the VHS that I had when I was a child. I still have a VHS that I guess dates me, I suppose, but
I still do as well.
even on a VHS, I could still see the whale that swims in between like the thing. It's like, ooh. I'm like,
when some people don't like that because there's obviously no whales in the Red Sea, but I feel like you've got to allow some degree of artistic license for your animators to make something beautiful. I think it's fine.
I agree on that one. The other thing that is cool is right as the Red Sea splits and that column of fire comes to separate the Egyptians from the Hebrews. I love that moment because I'm like, that's so accurate to even what the Bible said. It's cool because it comes down, and if I remember correctly, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, on the Egyptian side, it was a dark cloud dividing them and they couldn't see. On the Israelite side, it was the fire giving them light and they could see. And so the sea split and they went through it. And I was, yes, so well done.
I also love, even as they're beginning to gather, and you have Miriam starts the many nights we prayed with no proof anyone could hear, and then another person starts singing, and then another and another and another, until you get this just beautiful song. There can be miracles when you believe.
See, that song is the best transition from the dark heaviness of the death of the firstborn into celebrating that they are free. And it was such a great transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my all-time favorite songs. I absolutely love that song.
Even in kind of more radical tone shifts, the movie just absolutely nails it. It can go from dark to light, even a little silly, to dead serious, and it all handles itself just in about as good a way as you could ever hope for.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is because it starts out with just her singing, and then you get more and more and more and more and more and more. So that helps the transition.
And I guess the darndest thing about it is that at the end, Ramses is the only survivor, because all the Egyptians pretty much
drown.
They get a big old drink, and Ramses is the only one that is left alive. And I'm
pretty sure in the Bible even Pharaoh drowned, but artistic license.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Durban, but I think that it would have taken them like days to cross the Red Sea.
It
Like, this was
probably
not
would
just a
have for
quick
their
thing.
sheer number, but that's also why there was that fire between the Hebrews and the Egyptians. It gave the Hebrews time to get through, and then when the time came to draw the Egyptians through, then the fire came up.
Because it's like many miles, right?
I think
like it's
so.
a long.
I've never been there, but I
Yeah.
assume it is. I
feel
don't
like I
have a
heard that
visual of
somewhere.
in my head, but I wouldn't be surprised. And I think they've even found like a path where they could have crossed and like crusted chariots and stuff down under the water, even, not so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the movie ends with Moses going to Mount Sinai and receiving the 10 Commandments. And
you think that's a happy ending, but that ain't. That's when he comes down and there's the golden calf. So for us, we're like, animated movie, happy ending, yay. And in real life, it's like, oh crap, this is where it's getting hard.
Yeah, we actually have rules now.
It always makes me a little bit sad when I finish watching this movie, because I just wish that this had been the thing that had taken off from DreamWorks as opposed to Shrek. I just feel like, I mean, Shrek's fine for what it is, but I just feel like it would have been such a more rich, interesting, beautiful legacy from DreamWorks if this had been the thing that had been the big hit. So it's always a bit of a shame to me.
To be fair, though, DreamWorks did give us Joseph and the King of Dreams, or Joseph King of Dreams.
I actually didn't
I
see
think
that
is very underrated.
It's not near as good as this, but that's not a fair standard. But it's perfectly serviceable to watch.
All right, well, I guess on to the rating, and on my rating system from amazing, great, good, forgettable, and horrid, this is an amazing across the board, and I'm sure you all concur with my assessment.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Yeah, one of my favorites.
I'd go with amazing. It just did a good job capturing the atmosphere, the memorable music, and it just draws you right into the whole story.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the best, if you count this as a faith-based film, I think it's one of the best ever made, if not the best.
It's hard to get a good faith-based film that doesn't preach a sermon at you, but delivers the message. And this one definitely, it toted that line well. And it did it through the music, through the acting, through the story. It did a great job.
Yeah.
A faith-based movie that isn't preachy. Why did I just not think of God's Not Dead just now?
Those movies.
Yeah. But if you like Prince of Egypt, I do recommend checking out some of other Stephen Schwartz. Check out The Children of Eden. It's really fun. And Godspell and some of his other religious themed works. I think you'd enjoy them.
Yeah, Godspell is supremely underrated. When will God save the people? And just so many amazing songs like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's
so
really
anyway,
good.
That's all for us. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. This was a lot of fun. I'm just so happy with where my channel's going. I've got friends in the YouTube space, and they're willing to spend time with me talking about an amazing movie. It's like, I don't care if I get to like Jake Paul numbers. Like I'm the richest man in the world right now.
Well, thank you for having me. It's so great to talk about this film. It was really nice to have an excuse to watch it. And I have a bunch of coverage of this movie over on my channel. I have a episode of our underappreciated animation with Stanford where we talked about it in detail. I have another kind of random episode that I did a couple of years ago where I was comparing this to Moana because it's random, but I was having a conversation with a friend on Twitter and we somehow started talking about that, and he liked Moana better and I like this better, and so we had a whole episode of the podcast about it. It was really good. And then I also have another episode where I compare this Ten Commandments and Exodus Gods and Kings or whatever.
It was a terrible movie. You don't need to
I have a feeling I know the ranking of the movies.
Yeah, I think so. But that one I did way back in 2015, but it's still pretty fun.
All those videos will be linked in the description of this video. And Durban, any other Prince of Egypt wares from you?
I actually did do a Prince of Egypt video on my channel. I think it was last year. Might have been 2 years ago. because we went through a pandemic and I have no track of time anymore. But I did this a theological analysis for Easter a year or two ago, getting deep into Prince of Egypt and kind of analytically looking at the symbolism and stuff. I also did a video on Exodus, Gods and Kings. It's called How They Should Have Done It, because that movie was terrible. So I went through the one thing that I might have liked with the movie and then dove into everything they did wrong with it. But here, if you did the Bible and took that same budget and same creativity, how you could have done it so much better. Anyway, I have both of those movies up. And then I even compared Exodus to Prince of Egypt, and that's what inspired the Prince of Egypt video that I did.
And that video will also be in the description below. And like I said, that's all for us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Rachel, we host the Hidden Gems podcast every Friday, and then depending on when it's more of a floating day, but we also do Best and Worst, and that's over on your channel, which will be linked in the description. But please tell everyone at home about what all else you do. Family Movie Night, Obscure Animation.
Yeah. Every week, every Monday, I have Family Movie Night, and then I also do a podcast episode every Wednesday, and then we do Hidden Gems on Friday. So it's a lot of fun over on my channel, and I'd really appreciate you checking it out. And then also, I have the Hallmarkies podcast, where we talk about all different kinds of rom-coms and holiday films, and we have so much fun. And I also get to interview a lot of really cool people for over there, so check it out.
I swear, Rachel's going to become Miss Hallmark, and I'm going to live long enough to see it. And then, of course, Durban, thank you again for being a part of all this. You are, without a doubt, the guy with the biggest subscriber count ever on my channel. So just that it's surreal that you're even here. So thank you again, and please tell the people where they can find you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your channel. It's great to have a brand new YouTube friend to do more things in the future with, hopefully. So I'd love to come on again and talk anything else that you have. But you can search me, Durbania. I'm the one and only channel with that name, so I will pop right up, and I do movie reviews, I do ranking videos, and then I have this unique thing called a theological analysis. So I like to find God in movies, especially movies that aren't Christian, that don't seem to have that in there, but you can definitely find it if you look. So I love to pull that out, find those messages. Definitely have one on Prince of Egypt, have one on Exodus, Gods and Kings, that rotten movie. Anyway, so you could definitely check that out and more, and I got a couple of good ones in the works as well.
Yeah, the Captain America the Winter Soldier one is a particularly good episode. That I can say for certain. And then this coming Sunday, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite comedies of all time, the Three Flavors of Cornetto trilogy. There are a lot of videos talking about it, but I'm going to try and find some underrated moments in there. So thank you all so much for checking out this video. And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. God bless all of you on this beautiful Easter Sunday, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, everyone.